all so much for being here. I am Olivia. I am a developer advocate on the VS Code team, and welcome to our release party. If you haven't been to our release parties before, they're super fun. It's a chance for the engineering team to come on and showcase some of the latest and greatest features of VS Code. So really, this is meant to be just kind of like a casual showcase of features. And the coolest thing is in the chat, you can interact with them, ask a bunch of questions, let us know what features you want to see, things like that. So to kick off the chat, let me know where you're watching from and let me know what feature you are most excited for in this most recent release. It's great to be here with you all today. Some of y'all might have realized that we haven't had a release party in a few months. We are going to switch to a quarterly cadence. So we'll have the release party today and then another one in a few months. That just gives us an opportunity to kind of dive a little deeper into multiple features. So we'll probably go a little bit longer than you're used to if you've been joining these, but it'll be jam-packed with a lot of fun. But this is all for you. So if you're like, no, I need my monthly release party fix, let us know and we'll make it work. All right, I love the energy in the chat, saying hello from South Bend, Indiana. Doug, as always, it's amazing to see you. Thank you so much for the welcome back. It's so good to be back. For those of you who might not have known, I was actually out on maternity leave. So this is my first time being back to host one of these release parties, and I am, oh my gosh, so excited to be here with y'all. Ooh, Rochester, New York, and you're excited to see Copilot? Michael, you're gonna be excited. Just you wait. We have something in store for you. Oh, hello from Lebanon. I love seeing people from all over the world. Love to work with VS Code. Thank you so much for being here. We love to have you here. We love that you love our product. Watching from Texas. Cool. Oh, and a first-time watcher from California. Not sure what feature you're looking forward to. Just here to learn. I love that. And I hope you learn a lot from today's live stream. All right, so with that, we are an open source project, so we like to kind of always kick these off with a thank you to our contributors. So at the bottom of every release notes, we have a whole thank you section to all the contributors that helped make our latest release possible. Like I mentioned, you're going to be hearing from the engineers on the VS Code team today, and I think every single one of them will echo that VS Code wouldn't be what it is today without all these amazing contributors. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick scroll through because, as always, it's way too many people for me to sit here and verbally go one by one. But if your name is on this list and you're here, thank you so much. And if you are wondering how you can contribute to the VS Code repo or any of the VS Code repos, head on over to the GitHub VS Code repo. There is a contributing guide. You can follow that. It's a great way to get involved in a product that you love. So again, thank you so much for everyone here. Like I said, always have these at the bottom of the notes. So shout out to everyone who helps make this possible. Okay. So with that, I know y'all are here to see the cool features we have. So let's dive into our first demo. Hey, Sandeep.
Hi, Olivia.
How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I'm great. I'm so excited to have you here. I know we've had you here on a few release parties before. You know, you do great work, especially in the profile space. So not to spoil your demo, but would you like to talk a little bit about what you're going to be showing?
Yeah, it's about profiles. So yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the release party. I'm Sandeep. I'm a developer from VS Code team. Today I'm going to talk about the new exciting feature from VS Code, which is the profiles editor. So you might have already you might be already familiar with the profiles in VS Code. So these profiles allow you to have different configs for different configurations for different contexts. So with this new profile editor, it makes it much more easier to manage these profiles, and managing them has become more streamlined. Before I dive into the new profiles editor, I would just try to give a quick recap of what profiles are so that we can understand what profiles editor is doing. So with profiles, you can tailor your VS Code editor into different needs by managing your extensions and settings. The layout. For example, you can have different extensions for different environments or different kinds of programming languages. So you can tailor all these configurations and have profile for different type of environments like work, front-end development, back-end development, or Java project development, or web development, etc. So this is quickly about profiles. Now I quickly jump into the profiles editor feature, which we have released recently. So the profiles editor is accessible from the bottom gear icon. You can always customize the gear icon with the profile icon. So it opens the profiles editor. So this is the profiles editor which I've been talking about. From here, you can manage all the profiles. We can see all the profiles you have in your VS Code. You can create profiles. You can edit profiles. So I will start with the creation flow, and I explain how it is, how was it made easier with the new profiles editor. So I will try to. Currently, I am in a sample Python project. So this is a simple Python project. I want to create a profile which makes it easier for me to develop the Python project. So let me create a new profile, and I call it Python. And I'll also give an icon here. So I give the snake icon for Python. And then there is an option called copy from. So let's see what we have here. I think you can copy, when you say copy from none, which means that you want to create a blank profile. But still, I want to do some Python development. We have some predefined templates like Python, Angular, Docwriter, and etc. And you can also create a profile from your existing profiles. So let's, I'll select the Python template, which comes out of the box. So the interesting thing is that as soon as I select the Python template, you can see the contents option here. It says, so the contents are settings. So the Python profile provides settings. We can see what settings the Python profile comes up with. So you can always have an action here to see what settings are there in the Python profile. And you can also go down and see there are some snippets which are coming from that. So we can also see the contents of the snippets, and least but also not least, last but not also important, which is what are the extensions those are coming up with the profile. You can always see them, and you can review them, and and then we can go to create the profile. Before that, we can also see there is another option here. So you can choose whether you want to get the contents from the Python profile, or you want to start that specific resource to be empty. Or there is also an option called default. For example, so I always have a keyboard shortcuts in my configured for my VS Code, and I would not like to change my keyboard shortcuts from profile to profile. I have those keyboard shortcuts in my default profile, so I can say, hey, in this profile, I want to use keyboard shortcuts from my default profile. So I can just select the this option here, so that when I create this profile, this still uses the keyboards from the default profile. And once I configured my profile, I can now go and see. I can go with the create, but if I'm still a little bit doubtful, I want to see how the profile looks like after being created. I can have this. We have this preview option. We can just click on this preview option. What it does is it creates an temporary profile. So it's creating it. So let's wait a moment. Until it creates all the extensions, and then it opens a new window with the profile which we have just configured. It is not yet completely created, but it gives us a preview. And here we can go and see what the extensions are and how the UI looks like. If you want to install more extensions, for example, maybe I like a theme which is called Min theme. I can maybe install it and set the theme here to Min Light, for example. And then I'm satisfied with the profile, and I close it. I go back, and then I can create the profile.
Oh, so you making those changes in the preview will then make the changes for when you actually create it. So now when you have this created profile, it'll have those extra differences.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Cool. Yeah. So you can do the changes in the preview, and then once you create the profile, those changes will be available in the profile.
Nice.
Yeah. And
there's a question. if you could just kind of explain a little, oops, that was the wrong one. If you could just kind of explain the difference between default and Python sources. I think maybe if you could talk some about like where these sources are coming from. So you kind of have those different templates. Like, are these official vetted profile sources that people can just use? And how do you kind of know what's going to be in it?
Yeah, so talking about first the templates. So these templates are coming out of the box from the VS Code. So when VS Code is shipped, so we ship this out of the box templates along with the VS Code. So these are available with the VS Code. Currently, these are not customizable. These are inbuilt. You cannot have custom imported templates, but I will talk about how to import in the next couple of minutes. Regarding the sources, so here you can always, yeah. So now I'm in my Python profile. So here it says default and Python in the sources, which means that settings are coming from the Python profile. So if you want to switch the settings to be used from the default profile, so you can always say, hey, I want the settings from the default profile. It's a mutually exclusive option where you can choose whether you want this specific configuration to be coming from default or the existing profile. So the perfect example is keyboard shortcuts. As I said before, I would not like to have customizable keyboard shortcuts per profile. I always want to have keyboard shortcuts across profiles. So for which I configured keyboard shortcuts in the default profile, and then I use the keyboard shortcuts from the default profile everywhere in all profiles by choosing this option. Yeah, so once you have a profile, I think from here you can see the profiles are there, and then you can always manage from here. You can change the name. You can change if you don't like, for example, I have a demo profile. I don't like this icon. I can always go and say, change the icon. The changes are immediately updated. You can see here. Yeah, it's pretty cool that you can do everything in one place.
Yeah. Profiles are so powerful. So I love kind of seeing these updates to make it even more manageable. Awesome. There are a few questions in the chat. Is now a good time to ask, or do you want to dive into the next part of profiles you want to show?
No, I think I can answer the questions.
Okay.
Now. Yeah.
Cool. So there's a few. So Rami, hope I am pronouncing that correctly. So this is obviously a new profile UI. Rami says that they miss kind of how quick it was to switch between profiles. So do you want to talk about like if people don't like this experience, how maybe they could use the command palette to easily switch between profiles?
Yeah. So I got that question, and I got the feedback. So previously we used to have switching profile from here. So we are trying to figure out how many times users change the profile. I think we have the hypothesis that once you associate a profile to a workspace, so that's very rarely that you change a profile. So we are assuming that that's an action which you do very less often. Yeah, but we are hearing the feedback here. If there is a lot of people who would like to switch profile from here, we will definitely think about it. But for now, one of the reasons why we would like to have everything, we want to have everything in the centralized place in the profile center where you can configure and change profiles or switch profiles. Awesome.
And then one other question, if someone creates a lot of profiles, are there going to be any performance issues in VS Code in general?
No, I don't think there will be any performance issue. I think it might make it much efficient if you have different profiles and you are having different environments. I think and you always have less number of extensions loaded in a single profile. So I would say more efficient than not being performant. It's performant.
There's one more question, but I think you're probably going to cover it in what you're going to show next. So I'm going to hold on that if you want to dive into your next part.
Sure. Yeah, I will continue it and maybe take questions later. So the next couple of things is about how to export and import a profile. These features are already there, but I would show how you will do it. This will be done in the new editor. So let's say this is my working environment where I use this work profile a lot, and probably maybe one of the team colleagues, team members would like to try out this profile. I can export it from here by clicking it and say export. And then this will allow me to create a gist in GitHub, which will create a link to the profile. And then I can come back here, and then I say I want to import that profile. I say import here, and then I give the gist link. And then this will automatically load the profile into the creation into the creation form. You can see the name and icon, everything. And you can also see that the settings are coming from the work profile and the extensions, what extensions are there. And you can also see what settings are there in the profile, which I'm going to import. And as before, I always want my default keyboard shortcuts. And yeah, and you can also always review what extensions are there in the exported profile which you want to import. And then it's again the same creation flow. You can preview and create. So the main intention here is that however you're in whatever way you're trying to create a profile, we would like to provide a similar consistent flow to create it and preview it. So this is about importing and exporting. And other small features are let me cancel it. So you can see that once you created a profile, there is an option where you say use for new windows. Right now, when you create a new window, we always take the profile which is active, which is in the active window, but you can always configure it. Let's say I want my demo profile or my Python profile to be default for new windows. When I select this, and if I create a new window now, so this takes the Python profile. So you can configure what is the default profile for new windows. That's pretty cool. And then we also provide a couple of options, like you can always go here and create a new window using this profile from here itself. For example, if I want to create a new window with the default profile, you can use this option. We can also do it from the file menu, where it's a file new. So you can always go with new window with profile, and it lists all the available profiles, and you can create a new window with that profile. These are a couple of handy features which you can have. Yep, I think I'm almost done. I covered the complete feature set in the profiles editor. I think there's still more to come. So this is just the initial set of features to get the full-fledged profile editor. We would like to enhance more on top of it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all this. I think profiles are one of my favorite recent features. I know they've been in VS Code for a little bit now. This is kind of the new UI for them, but profiles are one of my favorite features in VS Code. It just makes it so easy to kind of have those separate contexts, basically. It makes it easier to kind of be like, okay, I have everything here, and I don't have things I don't need. I think sometimes it can get really overwhelming when you're working on a bunch of different projects or different contexts, and you just have everything you need for everything, and it's just overwhelming. So if you're not using profiles, I highly recommend it. I think we do have a few questions. So Robert asks, and I think that this was half answered. So Robert asks, will there be other profiles added in the future, or a way to add ones from GitHub repos elsewhere? So it sounds like if they want to add ones from GitHub repos, the easiest way is to import the
export and import.
Export and import.
Yeah.
And then will there be other, in the Python or in the profile source, there's kind of that drop down of 6 or 7 kind of out of the box templates that you showed. Will there be other profiles added to that, or is that kind of the set list that we'll have? Yeah. I
think we are open here. I think these are the set of templates which we think are more useful. I think we'll always see the need and come up with new templates if needed.
Awesome. Cool. Is there somewhere that people can give feedback on this for either the new UI experience, or if they want different profile templates? What's the best place to go to?
I would recommend to file issues in GitHub VS Code repository, so that we will track them and then reply to them.
Awesome. Cool. And then Sigma Scorpion has a clarifying question. I think the heart of this, if they edit settings in their VS Code, will the profile automatically take that, or do they have to also change it in the settings JSON file?
No, it's automatic. So if you change settings in the current window, it automatically takes.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So let's see if we have any other questions. There's one feedback from Guy said that it would be cool if we could see extensions with related dependent extensions underneath it rather than just alphabetically. So Guy, thanks for your feedback. We always like to hear kind of what users like to see. But otherwise, we have a ton of love for profiles, lots of thank yous, already liking it. Let's see, they said, oh, they love it. Super cool. Never thought to use profiles that way. So I love to see that y'all are using these and love to hear your questions and any feedback you have on this. So with that, Sandeep, is there anything else you would like to show or end on?
No, that's it. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the feedback, and I would highly appreciate providing your feedback in the GitHub in our VS Code GitHub repo for any issues or for any enhancement requests.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Sandeep. I'm sure we will see you in the future again to see how this has evolved even more. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. That brings us to our next feature with Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hello.
How's it going?
Oh, going pretty well. Yeah, it's been a little while since we've had one of these, so excited to show off some of the stuff we've been working on.
Yeah, I know there's a lot that we need to cover, and I know you've been working on a lot in your realm of where you kind of operate in VS Code. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of dive in and see what you have for us today.
Yeah. All right, let's get started here. So the main one I actually want to show off is working with Copilot. And the feature here is that oftentimes when you're working with Copilot, you'll ask a question where it generates a code block in the response. So here I have a chat going on, and I've asked it to show how to do binary search in JavaScript. And you can see if I scroll down here, it has all the explanation, and then we actually get to the code. And what we've been working on is actually enabling the same IntelliSense features that you have in your normal editor inside of these little code blocks as well. So looking at this code block, I can see that this code is implementing binary search. But if I wanted to learn more about some of the types in here, like let's say I was interested in one of the like the variable here, right? And I was wanting to see what the actual type is. I can just go and hover over that, and I can see that that is a number. If I wanted to see what the type of math floor is giving back here, I can also go and see that that is giving back a number. And if I was actually curious about what this built-in math floor function was doing, I can also just go hover there and see that this is giving us the same documentation that we'd see in a normal editor for math floor, and it's telling us what exactly this is doing. Now, we also get some other IntelliSense features here. So if I'm interested in maybe seeing where some of these local variables are used, so like where is left used in this function here, I can just go and click on left, and now it's highlighting all the occurrences of the left variable anywhere inside of this code. So it's really helpful to be able to see these occurrences. Lets me quickly identify where these are. Now, let's say that I scrolled down a little bit, and I was like wondering where is mid actually defined as I'm looking at this code down here. Well, I can actually just go and click on this with Control or Command, hold that down, and you can now go and click on this, and it'll go to the definition of where this is used. So it's up here, and I think I messed something up because it didn't scroll quite right, but you can see that it actually moved my cursor up here to where mid was being defined. If I wanted to go and see some other definitions as well, like if I wanted to see where the math floor types are defined, I can even just go and click on that, and it'll open up the same typings that we'd see if we went and control clicked on math floor over in the editor. We have a lot more documentation for the entire built-in math type over here. So all of these features are things that you would get in your normal VS Code editor when you're working with JavaScript or TypeScript. But now we're bringing them over into the panel chat over here and providing that additional functionality so you can learn more about the code blocks that are being generated. So let's actually go.
I think that is so helpful because I think, as we talk about Copilot, we kind of always say, Copilot, it's Copilot. It's not the pilot. Like you should always kind of, know what kind of code it's generating. You should look at it, make sure it's what you want. And this just takes it to the next level to make sure you are understanding the code it generates. You're not just blindly accepting things. You're like, I have no idea what this does. You can really easily kind of inspect it and really dive into it more easily in the generated response. So I think that that's really powerful.
Yeah, and it's all the same familiar functionality and IntelliSense features that you expect from working with normal code, just brought over into this chat panel as well. And this works, as I'll show in a little while, also with code that Copilot is generating based on your workspace. But let's actually go in here and take a look at another little example. So let's go down here. And now I'm asking Copilot to draw a blue circle on a canvas with HTML. So we can go in here. You can see it's generating some HTML. We also get the same functionality for HTML. So if I was wondering, like, what does this title element do? You can see that I get the documentation for the title element or the title tag here. So the IntelliSense is working across different languages. Not every single language is going to support this just yet. So all of the built-in VS Code languages, JavaScript, TypeScript, CSS, those are all going to have at least basic IntelliSense support over here in chat. And then some of our other languages that we work on, like Python, for instance, C#, they also have some IntelliSense that they have added, but not every single language has IntelliSense yet, but we're working with various extension partners to make sure they can support this as well. So you can see we get our nice HTML IntelliSense here. Let's actually go down to the TypeScript. And this is really helpful, I find, for learning about either built-in functions or library functions. Again, if we were wanting to learn more about, like, what does this get context function here do, you can see I can just hover over that and we get that nice documentation the same way that we would get if we're working in a normal editor. You can even go and open MDN, which is going to go and open up the documentation page for this if we wanted to go and view this over on MDN, for example. So it's just really helpful to be able to understand what is actually happening in this code without having to go and ask Copilot a follow-up question like, what does get context do, or anything like that. I just get my normal IntelliSense experience right in the code block right over here in the chat.
That's awesome. So just to reiterate, when you're kind of talking about what languages are supported here, so kind of those, like, the languages are kind of already built in out of the box with VS Code. So TypeScript, JavaScript, HTML, we're going to get that IntelliSense in Copilot. And then it's kind of, in the pipeline, hopefully those other extensions that contribute IntelliSense, hopefully we can wrap that into it as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And for, like, Python, for instance, you would need to make sure you install the Python extension. It's the same type of thing as if you opened a Python file, you need the Python extension. Other languages will have to go and actually add support for this, but it's not too hard for them to do in general. So we're hoping that they should be able to add support pretty easily and start providing the IntelliSense over here in chat as well.
Awesome. That's great to know.
Now, the other use case here is that oftentimes you're asking Copilot a question that is about code that's inside of your workspace. So one of the nice things about Copilot is that it can actually go and look at your entire workspace, look at all the code there, and try to answer questions, give you new code, tell you where existing code is in your workspace. So that's what we're doing here. You can see that we're asking a @workspace question, which means that it's going to go and try to answer this in the context of our current workspace. And I'm currently in the Markdown language service, which is actually what implements all of VS Code's fancy Markdown features, such as code folding. So here I've asked, where is code folding actually implemented? And asked it also to share some code examples. And here, when it is actually generating these code samples, these are coming from the workspace itself. So they might be slightly different than what actually appears in the workspace. So you can see it has the little ... dots here that it's adding in. But these are actually generated from the workspace. And we actually get IntelliSense for these cases as well. So looking at this code, let's say I was wondering, what does iText document actually do? So I can just go in here and you can see that I can go and control click or command click to go to the definition of iText document. And now we actually get the, you can see over here, here's the actual type in our workspace for where iText document was defined. So that's really useful to be able to jump directly from the IntelliSense over here to actually go and see iText document over here inside of our workspace. And if I wanted to, I could even go and right click in here and let's go to the implementations of this. So I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see this. Here we've got our context menu. You can see we have some of the common IntelliSense operations. So if I wanted to go and find the implementations, I could say go to implementation. It's going to go in here. And now it's actually gone and over here in this main editor, it's opened up one of the implementations of iText document. So you can see here's the in-memory version of an iText document. Again, these are all operations you could do with IntelliSense in your normal text editor, but now brought over here where we also now are getting that nice IntelliSense experience.
That is awesome. We have Doug in the chat saying super useful. I think that, this is just kind of a testament to one of the core VS Code principles that you kind of want to have the same sort of experience all throughout the editor. So being able to have that IntelliSense that you're used to in the general editor, now in Copilot, and I think also there's some of that in vscode.dev now too, I think is a really cool testament.
Yeah, and again, we really want this to be a familiar experience. Almost all the keyboard shortcuts and normal ways of interacting with the code, they should work over here as well. Now, there are some differences, for example, because this is like a little editor that you can't actually type in. So you're not going to be able to do things like suggestions, for instance, over here, because this is a little read-only editor. And then, as I mentioned, maybe not every language will support every single feature out of the box. But in general, things for, especially just for reading code, should work just like you would expect over here in these little editors now.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, this is great. Is there anything else that you would like to show or chat about, Matt?
Yeah, I'm actually going to show off one other little feature here. So let's switch over to a new project. And this one is, we've been doing a lot recently around supporting dragging and dropping or copying and pasting of resources. So we've added a little quality of life feature that makes it easy to insert URL in CSS files. So here I have a little HTML web page. You can see it's including this style sheet here. And let's say that we wanted to go and add a background to our web page. So I'm actually going to go, and I've installed the live preview extension. So I can open up a preview of my page here. You can see it's very boring at the moment. Let's go over to our style sheet, though, and make it a little bit more exciting. So I'm going to go, and you can see I'm going to go and add a rule for the body element here. And to do that, I'm just going to say background here. And if I wanted to go and insert the image over here, all I have to do now is just go and drag and drop this image over from the Explorer. And I'm going to go and then hold down Shift to actually drop this image into the current file. So I'm going to hold down Shift. You can see I get a little preview of where this image is going to be dropped. I'm going to drop it right here. And you can see that as soon as I went and dropped that image, now it's gone and inserted a URL function here. So we can see that our preview has updated automatically. And we have a very fancy web page that has now been created just by dragging and dropping that file over there.
Fancy cat. I love it.
Yes.
I was like, what's this image going to be? I should have known.
Yeah, so you can do the same with copy and paste as well. So if I preferred copying and pasting instead, I could go over to my Explorer, copy this. So I've copied this now, go back to the file and paste, and you can see it's inserted the URL here as well. So very easy to go and insert the URL function now. Now, if you didn't want this behavior, let's say that I instead wanted to insert something different, you get this little paste dropdown that is going to let you choose how the file is being inserted. So I am by default inserting the URL function here, but we have some other options as well. So we can do things like insert the relative path, which is going to be the workspace relative path, or the absolute path to the file as well. So if I go to relative path, for example, you can see it's just going to insert the text without the URL function. So a few different ways you can actually go and insert the image. And then extensions can always go and contribute other ways that you could go and paste files or paste images into various languages, such as CSS.
That's awesome. And I know for me personally, like I hate having to remember, okay, what's like the file path to get to this? So just being able to drag and drop is so helpful. And yeah, you showed just how easy that is. There's lots of love saying thank you for this feature. That's cool. I think this was back with the Copilot stuff you're showing, saying this is perfect for full stack developers, like even just for config files, if that's going to show, so you can kind of get more information there. Thumbs up from Doug. Here's one question not completely related to what feature you showed, but they noticed that in your code file, it kind of showed like the number of references at the top of a method, who last edited a line. Is that, yeah, so like 4 references, you last edited, is that an extension? Is that built-in functionality? How did you get that?
This is actually built in for certain languages. So this is the references code lens. And for TypeScript, if we just go over to our settings and say references code lens, we can go and find the setting here. You can see there's ones for different languages, but I've turned it on for TypeScript. And this will go and show the little reference count above any classes or exported symbols, such as this variable here. And then we can go and click on that and actually see a little peek of all the different places where this variable is being used throughout our code base. It's kind of helpful, I find, for tracking down when something isn't used anywhere. So you would see 0 references, and that is a good indication that you could actually go and delete it.
Oh, that's a good point. Because yeah, I mean, anyone who's worked on like any sort of legacy code or anything, or just like a giant code base, you know that there's multiple methods like that have just been hanging around and no one's cleaned up. So that's a really great use case for that.
And this part here, so the references code lens, that is built in. This part here where it's saying that I am the author and it has some information coming from Git, I believe that is coming from the GitLens extension. So you can install the GitLens extension, and then it should show this information. I think on exported classes, or I forget exactly where it shows them, but it's going to show them on certain important symbols in your project. It's not going to show them everywhere, as you can see. So the references are showing in more locations, but on some of these important locations, it's going to show this information.
Awesome. I love GitLens. That's a great extension. If y'all aren't using it, definitely recommend it.
Yep, this is definitely GitLens. So just double checking there.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much for answering that. Another thanks in the chat. Okay. Lots of great stuff here. Is there anything else you would like to show or talk about that's coming up in the pipeline?
No, I think we're continuing to work on improving IntelliSense for the chat responses. So doing some exciting things around when we show inline code, for example. So working on improving that experience, working on improving what we can do with like file names that also get printed in chat. So just making interacting with chat a little bit more like you're actually interacting with code in a normal editor, and bringing a lot of those operations that you are familiar with over to chat as well.
I love that. Again, just kind of making that seamless experience. So everything's as consistent as possible, easy to adopt. Anything that's familiar is always, a little bit easier to kind of get used to and everything like that.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Matt, so much. As always, it was a pleasure having you on. I'm sure we will see plenty of you in the future as well. But hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. All right. That brings us to our next feature, which will be demoed by Eleanor. Hey, Eleanor.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. How are you doing today?
Great. This is my first time on the release party.
I know.
I've been on the Python Pulse before, but have not yet been on the release party.
That is a great shout out actually for the Python Pulse. If y'all aren't already aware, which hopefully you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, so you kind of see these sort of things. But we have Python Pulse, which Eleanor, do you know the frequency we do that out? Maybe once a month, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. Just new features or helpful things, that type of stuff. The amazing John Wages does it. So,
John is amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. John is absolutely amazing. If y'all haven't gotten the chance, the pleasure to see anything with Dawn in, go track her down because she's amazing. But yeah, great plug for that. I actually think that there's a Python Pulse coming on in like a couple hours on our channel. So if you're into Python, check that out. And if you're into Python, you're going to like what Eleanor has to show here.
Definitely. Yeah. So what we're talking about today is Django test support. So this is actually one of our most requested features on the Python extension and has been open since 2017. So really excited to come here and fix it. I always joke that in 2017, I was still in high school. So that was a little bit of time ago, but excited to get it implemented. So what specifically it does is you have your Django application. I just follow the Django tutorial, not a Django expert, but just follow the tutorial on their website, and got this great setup, which is like this little web page that has polls. And so this is what you'll see from a regular Django setup. It helps me make this website. Some important things to point out are this manage PY path. And this file is just, exactly as it says, command line utility. So that's going to be really important when we talk about tests. And so one of the interesting things is that Django testing is actually backed by unit tests, the built-in test framework for Python. So then we have already had unit test support for a while. So what does Django test add? It has to do a lot with this managed PY path. So you have databases, you have a lot of setup that needs to happen. And so you need to run your tests through managed PY in order for it to work. So Django developers out there definitely would know that already, but heads up for all the other people that.
No, I love the background because this is out of my realm. So
yeah, no, definitely. So then if we this is our docs over here just on testing. And if you scroll down, you can get to Django unit tests. And this is the newly added stuff in relation to how to set up Django unit tests. It has a few extra steps. So I wanted to point this out because I'll keep this tab open as well, just to make sure I catch everything. But we're kind of going to do like these 3 steps, which is we have some settings we need to enable here and here. And then we're going to set up an environment variable that will allow us to enable and define where our managed PY path is. So if we go back over here, we can go over to our test explorer. This, you obviously need to have the Python extension enabled and a Python file open to get this up. But then you should see something like this. And then we have this flow that we can just go through. These the answers you have to these questions are not as important, because as you're going to see in a second, we're going to go in and make some changes. So that populated our settings page. And you can see that now we have unit test enabled, PyTest not enabled because we chose unit test, not PyTest. But then it auto-filled in some arguments. So these are all unit test arguments, not Django arguments. So these aren't actually going to be useful. So we're going to get rid of those. So that's important to remember, is that you probably want to start out with just blank for your unit test arguments when you're working on your Django project, because you don't really need to specify, those other things that unit test requires, and you can just keep it blank. So definitely, if you're having trouble, head over there, and that might be the trick that helps you out. So yeah, once it looks like this, then you're ready to go. And this flow is definitely, it has a few extra steps than maybe we would desire. So we're making progress on this right now. And if you have thoughts on arguments, configurations, how everything related to tests gets set up, definitely check out the VS Code Python repo. We have discussions right now. We're looking for input from the community on how best this flow should go. So we would love to hear from you, because we're actively making improvements in this area. So then after we have this set up, we can then we have to define an environment variable. So the easiest way to do that, I don't want it in my VS Code folder, I would want it at the root, is just create a .m file. So here, this .m file, if it's at the root of our project, gets picked up automatically. So if I put in my environment variable that's required, which once again is listed here in case I forgot exactly what I need to do, because it needs to be exactly right. And luckily it's super simple, because I just have my managed PY right at the root.
Okay, so
this is what
if that's like not at the root or something, that's where another place where maybe you like want to double check.
Yeah, definitely. And like I'm using this as like a relative path, but I could also go over here, click, and then say like copy path, copy relative path if I wanted to do the absolute one. If you have like a extra fun configuration, then you might need to specify something a little bit more, but this should work for a lot of Django.
A little spicy configuration, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing with this M file. If you just have it at the root, you're fine. You don't need to set anything else. If you put it somewhere else, you have another fancy configuration, you'll just have to define this M file. This is kind of that default value, so that's why it's working without us defining this. But again, if we have something like interesting, we can put this in and be able to point it right to whatever M file we wanted to pick up when we're running tests. So we're good. We don't need that. And then we're going to come over here. And this might take a second, or you might click the reload button, but we were lucky enough, it already popped up for us. And so these are our tests that we have, which are in our application. And this is them right here too. So test support gives you this tree, which is great. You can take a look at everything. Obviously, I had ran this maybe a few minutes ago. So I already have some statuses, but I can, run it again with the run button here. I have this inline support that I just exited out of, but it tells us a little bit more, the stack trace, all of that stuff. We also have all of the output here, just as you would see it if you ran from the command line.
That's awesome. And so really it's like once you kind of get that initial setup, which is documented in that Python testing link, which we put on the screen, but we'll also make sure will be in our show notes after this. So if you forget about it, don't worry, just check out the description and go straight there. Once you kind of have that set up, though, you kind of have like it works. Like you have kind of the normal test explorer you're used to.
Right, exactly. And one thing that's really great, I think, and is, well, one, the test explorer, just being able to run individual tests, but kind of one thing that Django gets you that is a reason why it's important for us to have specific Django test support is what I was talking about a bit with the database. If you see this one, this test, we add a question called "What's your favorite color?" And then we retrieve it, and then we check to make sure we can get this value out. And that works great, and that test passes because we can add something in and then check to see it's there. But then if you look at this one, this test actually checks to see if that question is still there, and we expect it to not return, because every time you run a test, Django is building up a completely blank starter database, so your tests aren't interfering with each other, so there's a lot of provided benefit there, and so all of our tests will work like that.
Awesome. And we do have one question.
Yeah,
can you debug the test easily too?
Definitely. Yep. So just over with this button here is the debug test. Let's see, we could put in a breakpoint. We can also do it from here if you right click, and we can debug the test. And now we're here in our debugging mode and can hop all around and look at everything.
Nice. So yeah, it really is just like the testing you're used to, integrated in it, but now with Django.
Yes.
I wanted to just really call out, you already mentioned it, but I think that it's a really cool story here. But just the fact that this was one of the most requested features here, all the way from 2017. I just think, again, it's a really good call out to the open source community, how we've been able to kind of track that issue, track all of y'all's responses. And then you can see as we are working on it in real time. And Eleanor already said, go to the VS Code Python repo if you have feedback, because we want to hear that. We want to know what you want to see, how we can streamline this. So again, I just really want to emphasize that, that we hear you when you want these features, as long as we can make it work in our work stream. We're always trying to do it. And we want to hear from you and do whatever we can to make the process as easy as possible.
Definitely. And, being able to do Django test support required this whole testing rewrite, which you probably heard about, that's been going on for like a year ago. We kind of got that going. So, there's so many incremental steps that need to get there. And so if you have a feature, definitely subscribe to the GitHub issue, because you can see us comment we're waiting on this thing, or this needs to happen, and so you can stay up to date on whatever's happening.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think sometimes people will be like, oh, this is a quick fix, and it's oh, well, maybe the final code will be, but there's a lot of steps that we have to do.
Right.
So yeah, we definitely like to be transparent with okay, we're not going to be able to get to this until we do this, or we're just not, we like to be as transparent as possible there. Because we do, and we want, this is a product for y'all. So
yeah. And the one other thing I'll call out here, which is just, I'm in the output logs for Python. This is where you can see everything you need to know about what's actually happening behind the scenes. But I think especially with Django and test running, all we're doing at the extension level to be able to populate your test results is we're just running it like you would run it from the command line, but just some extra things to kind of process the data and display it. So if you're debugging, if you have any issues, you can always search for this line in your logs, and this will tell you exactly what we're running, which is just your Python executable, that path we had talked about, manage PY, that we want to run tests. And then this part is the part that is this custom runner that we use to do it. But this is a great place to check to help debug, because there's always different things with test configurations, and give it a try in your terminal command line if something's not working. And a lot of the times, if you get it working in terminal, you can transfer it to making sure it works in VS Code.
Cool. Great call out for troubleshooting. Awesome. Lots of love for this. People saying thank you. This is great. Nice feature. Is there anything else you would like to show or chat about?
No, I think that's good. We did get maybe a question about the repo. I just followed the Django tutorial on their website. So definitely check that out. It will help you set it up just like I have it.
Cool. Sounds good. All right.
Awesome.
Eleanor,
Thank you.
thank you so much for being on here. I know it's your first time. I think it was great. You came in with a splash.
Appreciate it.
And we're definitely excited to see you here again on future release parties.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a good one. All right. That brings us to our next and final feature with Rob. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Olivia. Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here. I was just thinking I haven't done a release party in a really long time, and now here I am. So I'm really stoked.
Same. Yeah, that's all worked out. I think we're all like, oh, let's bring back the release party. Cool. Yeah. So if anyone's been to these previous release parties, you probably recognize Rob. But if not, here's Rob. So yeah, do you want to do just a quick intro and then talk about what you're going to be showing today?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Rob. I'm an engineer on the vscode team and been mainly focusing on Copilot recently. So that's what I'm here to talk about today.
Awesome. I know we have a lot of chatter about that already in the chat. So keep your questions coming, y'all. This is a great time to ask them.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into it. Got a few features to show today. It's been a while since we talked about Copilot in depth. So we've got a lot of things to cover. And the first thing I'm going to show, it's something that we've had for a couple months, and so maybe you've seen this already, but I really want to dig into it because I think that it is really important for, just kind of using Copilot really effectively. So what we have, you might have seen this paperclip icon appear a couple of releases ago. So this is a way to attach context explicitly to your request. And if I click this, there's several things that show up. There's these different types of context that I can add, and then I can also add files as attachments to my request. And so just as an example of something that I might ask, I've got this project open, which is a sample extension from our VS Code extension samples repo. And I could ask something like, right off the bat, it might not, know which files to look at in order to figure this out, but I can give it a hint by just attaching the package.json file like this. And so now if I submit this, it's going to, look at the package.json file. And if you're familiar with VS Code extensions at all, you know that the package.json file is, a place where the features that an extension contributes kind of get spelled out. Right, so we can just tell the LLM that this is the best place to look and kind of have it then summarize, that file for us. And so, just do what's actually happening in this extension is that it's contributing some views and view containers. These are, view containers are things that show up on the side, and views are the pieces of context, the pieces of data within those. And so it contributes a bunch of views, and then it gives it to me in this kind of form, which I find, easier to read than kind of looking at the package.json itself. I can also, give it another file just as an example, and say, what does this file do? And so this is the main entry point to my extension. And, again, it's just kind of describing what that file does. And so I can click this and open the file and read the actual code if that's what I want to do.
Something that, if you had just a text file with pseudocode or something, could you upload that and be generate code based off this algorithm or something like that?
Yeah, that's another good way to use it. I could write, I don't know, something like this, and, save that. And then I think if I attach, and I can also hit Command/ to bring up this menu, and then search for the file like this and turn this into Python. Then there we go. So I could also do that if I want to.
The most complicated way to write "Hello World" once.
True. True. But, you get the idea.
Yeah. We have one question. Sorry, I know you're kind of in the middle of this, but just while you're talking about it, how does this work with the hashtag file directive? Does that make this redundant, or does this kind of complement that functionality?
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. So that is just kind of another way to do essentially the same thing. So I can type hash, and then I see these same variables here. And I can also I can type file. We had this for a while in Insiders. You will actually see this kind of new experimental behavior where you can actually just type hash and then type the name of the file too, like this. And so we sort of have both ways to add context and add attachments. It's kind of just personal preference which one you want to use. I think one advantage of using the hash form is that you can make the variable sort of part of your query, and you can kind of ask questions about it. To give another example, let's say I want to ask a question like this, right? So I'm asking about a view in the context of VS Code, and in the context of this kind of API, like I was just talking about, this extension contributes views. And if I just ask this with no context, then it might tell me about like the model view controller architecture or something else. View can mean lots of different things in software engineering. But I can say, what is a view in hash VS Code API?
Oh.
And this is going to pull in some context. It's going to search our documentation for context, like related to VS Code extensions specifically. And that just acts as a hint to kind of tell it what specifically I'm asking about when I say view. And so yeah, it's like searched VS Code APIs, and so now it's giving me a response that's in that context of VS Code extensions.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like these are all really great tips to really help Copilot get the most relevant information for what you're actually asking. Like you were saying, like if you just said what's a view, like that's probably not, if you're asking in this context, Copilot's not going to know that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's a really great way to kind of scope that ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can also use these. Oh, I'll show one more thing. You can also attach a symbol, and so I could say JSON outline provider. That's it's a class that exists in this repo, and I can say, what is this? And now it's going to, it's just part of a file, right? You can see that we're looking at the specific range within this file, and so I can kind of be even more specific that way. And when it responds, we're linkifying things that we recognize as being symbol names or file names, and so I can click this and then go straight to that class definition that I included.
Nice, that's great. Doug agrees that this is cool. Yeah, I feel like these are all like very handy tips that maybe people don't realize you can do in Copilot. So it's very helpful to see this.
Yeah, and I can also use these attachments in inline chat. Right, and so if I'm in here, I hit Command-I to bring up this window where I can ask Copilot to write some code for me. And so I know that we also have so here we're registering one tree data provider. This is to set up a tree for a view to show node dependencies. And I know that there's another one in my package.json, but I don't have the code that actually implements it in here. And so I want to ask inline chat to, I know that I've called it JSON outline tree in my package.json, but the LLM doesn't necessarily know that right here. So I can also add an attachment and give it the package.json. And so this is going to make sure that it can see these features that I've contributed in the package.json and use that context in order to write code. And so here, yeah, sure enough, it was able to pull in that JSON outline provider, and then it was able to look up the ID, properly capitalized from package.json, and register a tree data provider. And it also went ahead and registered the commands that are missing that are related to JSON outline. So I'm going to accept those changes, and no errors, so that's great. And another thing is that I can also have a selection, and then I can right click, and we have this Copilot menu, and I can say add selection to chat. And so this is just another way to, to add a like specific range or a specific set of piece of text to the context, right? And so again, a little more focused than adding the entire file, right? And so I can add a couple ranges, for example, and I can say, just ask some question that that uses the context from these two ranges. Another like kind of context where I've done this is when I'm writing some code and I know that this code is similar to some other code somewhere else, and I might copy that that other piece of code in another file and use that as context and say, hey, like make it similar to this, like, you know,
Ooh,
in the
that's
same
nice.
style. But yeah, here it's describing these two pieces of code and how they relate to each other.
That's so nice. I feel like there's so many times, especially if you're like just going on to a new project and you like are like, oh cool, I have this thing, and then you'll like get a comment on the PR and be like, can you just implement it more like this exact function over here? And you're like, yes, but now I have to go look at that. And it's just like a lot easier to be like, okay, just use the context of, you know, the style we're using elsewhere. You know, this sort of setup takes a lot of kind of those extra mental steps out of the process. So that's great.
Exactly. And that's a case where I might like use the workspace agent, which lets me ask questions about my code base. And I might first say like, hey, is there any code that's similar to what I'm doing here? And then maybe that's how I can find that other method in the first place. And then I can add that method as context and say like, okay, you know, write this new code and make it similar to that other code.
Dang, that's how you impress all the developers on day one of your new project. You'd ask all these things. Like, wait, I already know all about this code base.
Yeah, I already know how to get around. Yeah, Copilot taught me.
Easy. We have one kind of general Copilot question. Infected Brain asks, is it safe to give GitHub Copilot API token that can then be used in the rest of the project?
Yeah, I mean, if you give it, you know, some private piece of data like an API token, you know, it's going to go into a request that goes up to OpenAI servers. And I guess that's kind of just on, you know, how much you trust OpenAI or Microsoft with your private data, right?
So proceed at your own risk.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Cool. Yeah, and then lots of, you said this simplifies the life of coder, sweet. So yeah, people are really into these Copilot features you're showing off. And I know you still have a lot more to show too. So everyone stay tuned for even more.
Great. Yeah, so the next thing I want to show, so this is a feature that we've had for a while, and I think that it often gets overlooked. Maybe we could do some things to make it more obvious, but I think that some people don't pay close attention to this button that we have right here. So this is show chats. So this, you know, when I clear my chat like I just did, this is how I can get back to all my old chat sessions. So I can click this, and we've had this for a while, but we've made some improvements to it last month, and that's what I want to talk about. So, you know, so I see all my old chat sessions here, and I can just, you know, pull up the one I just had, for example. And the improvements are that we have, like, you'll notice there's kind of a nice title here, which kind of summarizes the conversation. And so now we have a title for the chat, which is actually generated by the LLM. And it's essentially just a summary of the first interaction, the first request and response. It doesn't update as you continue the conversation. But I think it's a kind of gives you a nicer way to kind of understand what you're asking about. You know, previously the title was just like the text of the first request, you know, which doesn't really capture it. And I think this is a bit nicer. And, you know, as I kind of read through a long list of old chats, I find it easier to kind of find the previous chat that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of nice to remember because, I mean, you're a developer. Sometimes you do something last week that you literally cannot remember why you did. And I feel like this kind of does a good job of summarizing, like, why was I asking, like, why did I ask that question? It's like, oh, okay, that was a question about a linked list, right? Like, so it's like, oh, yeah. So it kind of makes it a little easier to kind of be like, okay, yeah, this is where I was at. Exactly. And then you can restore these chat sessions then, right?
Yep. So I can click it to just switch back to that chat session.
I find that super helpful again too, because it's like, okay, like, oh, I was working on this last week. I don't really want to start from scratch with the whole new prompt and everything. Like I just kind of want to build on that. And so then you just open it and just keep going. Like you don't, like you're just continuing the conversation. So I think that that's a really natural way to not have to like just have the same thing over and over again and feel like you're starting over every single time.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe it's, you know, wrote some really good code last week and you just want to get back to that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was on my game last week. Like, let's get back to that.
Yeah. And then, you know, I'm looking for chats based on when I remember using them. And another improvement we made is that previously these were sorted just by when the chat had been first created, right? So if I have a chat that's a session that's kind of been, you know, I've been using it for a long time and I created it months ago, then it's still kind of going to be at the bottom of the list. But now they're actually sorted based on when I last interacted with that chat, right? When I last sent a message, right? So if I pick an old chat, like, one from down here, and then I, ask another question, then that chat is actually going to go back up to the top of the list. So you can see this one is now in the today section. And then these are grouped by, today, yesterday. I think if I can show you one with more chats. So, going back weeks ago, months
Can you
ago.
zoom
whatever.
in here a little bit, Rob? Just 'cause it's a little small.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No worries.
So this is just my normal working VS Code repo window where I have more chats. And so, you can see that they're grouped in, by sections of days and then weeks, and then it would also show months and so on, going further back.
Nice. Yeah, I don't think I realized that it updates based off when you last interacted. And that makes so much more sense because it's like, if you are doing that thing where you're kind of like, just keep building off it, you don't want to be like, oh, wait, I actually started this chat 3 months ago. And now you just go back to 3 months of history or whatever. Be like, oh, I know I interacted with it yesterday, so let's get that. So I think that's a really handy feature that I don't think I really realized that that's how it updated. So that's really cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you don't like the name that the LLM came up with, then there's also a rename button, so you can click this, and you can put in whatever you want, and then it's going to rename it like that. And also not a new feature, but just to call it out, this button here is to open the chat in a chat editor, which is the same thing as what you see in the sidebar, but in the editor view. And sometimes this is kind of nice if you just want a wider view, or something like that, especially if you have lots of long code lines or something else like that.
Yeah, I like seeing kind of all these different places you can see Copilot, just because a lot of it is just your personal preference with how you want to interact. Like you're saying, like how much screen real estate you want it to be. So there's a lot of ways to customize your user interface there.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, next I want to show something that you can use today, but it is experimental. So I really want to call that out. It's behind a setting. This is the setting. You can also see this in our release notes.
Okay.
Zoom in here if I need to. And so you'll see often we're describing new features in the release notes, and we often put things out and we want to kind of get some early feedback on it. Although it might not be totally ready to turn on by default for everyone, and this is one of those. But what we're seeing here, what we're calling participant detection, like we've shown in the past, you can talk to different chat participants, like at workspace by typing at and then picking them out of the list. They also have then / commands that are behind these participants, right? And so I can still do this manually, right? Like I can ask, at workspace something like, like this. But something we're experimenting with is the ability to kind of automatically pick the right chat participant, and based on your question, right? And so now if I ask, so here we automatically detected that this is a question about the workspace in general. And then we picked the workspace chat participant automatically. And so then it was able to do what it does and search the workspace to pick relevant context, and all of that. And so it's, I don't know that the explicit typing at is ever going to fully go away, because there's just kind of a lot of functionality. And, especially for certain types of questions, sometimes they're just going to be a little vague, and you just want to explicitly manually tell the AI kind of what you mean and what you want to do. But for a lot of cases, I found that it works really, really well. So another example, if I have a prompt like, something like this, now it's going to go to the @workspace/new command, which is, something that is designed for creating new projects from scratch.
Cool. So it pulls in those flash commands too. That's awesome.
Exactly.
And yeah, I like too that, as you were saying, sometimes your question might be really general. So kind of being explicit is good. There's also, I see that rerun without option 2 at the start there. So if you're like, oh wait, actually I didn't want this chat participant, you can just easily rerun it to do kind of that more general scope.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, sometimes it will guess incorrectly, especially if it's a more vague question. And so if that's not what I wanted, then I can click rerun without, and here it just kind of goes back to the base model. And so then here, we still get kind of decent a decent response, because I think the base model, it's been trained on lots of data about VS Code extensions, but it does, so it just gives me kind of this text response of here's what you have to do, but it doesn't then give me this kind of nice interactive, oh, it went away because I did rerun without, it replaces. But, with the /new command, you saw like the file tree, and the fact that I can click the button to like automatically create all those files, for me. I don't have to do all this work manually. So that's kind of the benefit of going to that specific / command that you are actually trying to invoke.
That's awesome. And yeah, we were just scrolling an aka.ms link to the release notes. So again, like Rob mentioned, if you're wondering how you can enable this experimental setting, it's on his screen right now, but you can always head back to our release notes. And it will always tell you exactly how you can test it out. And again, experimental settings, we love to hear your feedback. That's the whole point of us putting them out there. You can then update your settings so you can opt into them and then try them out. Let us know what isn't working, what you love, what you'd like to see. And that's really the main feedback we're always hoping to get.
Exactly. Yeah, I would love to have everyone try it out and give us feedback and let us know how it works for you.
Awesome. There's one question, just kind of going back to the chat history. Just kind of clarifying, I think, when you're restoring a chat history, does the chat then use your past chats as context for the new answers like ChatGPT does?
Yeah, so it's using that, like you're asking a new question, and it's happening in the context of that previous conversation, right? So if I pull up an old chat, then I can just like seamlessly continue that conversation. And I don't know what a good example would be, but well, yeah, it is going to use that conversation as history.
Awesome.
Sorry, as context, I mean.
Cool. And then Doug asks, can you talk about any upcoming work with autonomous agents?
Yeah, that's definitely something that is being thought about, and I don't have anything like specific to kind of share in that arena though.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I know you have, I think, one more thing you want to show, Rob, or if there's anything else you want to show too on the chat participants, definitely we want to see it.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next thing. So this is another experimental feature that I think is already I'm finding really useful, and another thing that you can all try out if you'd like. It is mentioned also in the release notes here as custom code generation instructions. Right, so this lets you sort of plug in a custom set of instructions, which we will use as part of the prompt as context for the AI when it's generating code. And you can set this as a setting. You can put instructions directly in line in the setting. You can also have it point at a file if that is an easier way for you to manage your instructions. There's an example of that here. And I put a couple of basic things in here. If I ask it to do some logging, I always want to use console trace. This is a nice API in JavaScript because it also logs like a stack trace of the the calls that led to the point where this log is happening. And then just something about formatting, where maybe I really like to see curly braces on the next line rather than in line with a function definition or an if statement or something like that. All right, so if I go over here and maybe I'll go in here and say yeah, so here, I can just say if I add some logs, and then it's always going to follow my instructions and use console.trace. And or I could say add a log helper method. And now it followed my formatting instructions, put the curly brace on the new line. and I'll accept that.
So this kind of takes out like that, maybe like initial back and forth that you might have with, a generated response if it's not like the style that you are looking for or a certain format or something. So it kind of saves you that time.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have to retype all these commands all the time, right? I don't have to say, add logging, but use console.trace and format it like this and blah, 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 right? Like I could actually, see myself accumulating quite a few of these instructions.
Yeah.
It's almost like who needs ESLint ananymore, right? The AI is going to run the code and I can just kind of tell it how I want it to be formatted. You can even maybe give it an example of like proper formatting for code, just say, make it look like this, and it'll pick that up. So I think this is really cool.
Is this something that you could like check into your repo so that way you maybe have like a whole set of instructions that anyone on your team could then use and make sure that any generated code is of that certain format?
Yeah, exactly. So like I might have some instructions which are kind of like my personal user preferences, and you can see I have this in my user settings. But I could also, if it's something that I want to enforce for a repo, I have the settings. Yeah, I do. Like for this workspace, I could put it in here, and we could say, oh, these are the preferences for this particular project, or you might want to point at a file like this, and then I can, create this file and Copilot -md. I think this needs to be at the top level, and then say, what else could I say? I'll just copy one of these. This, and I haven't tried this yet. I think this will work. But if I say, well, I use the log method now, but anyway, which is probably exactly what I want, actually. And it also reformatted this to move my braces. You can say this, and yeah, so it still picked up that rule and use console.trace.
Nice. That's really cool that you can do that and have it referenced. Doug says that he's tried out the custom instructions, had great outcomes. We have one comment saying that they're struggling with GitHub Copilot to refactor a file without changing the format at the same time. So if I'm understanding this question correctly, it sounds like maybe these instructions could kind of help with that if you have a certain format that you're looking for. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. If that wasn't your exact question, just post something else in the chat to clarify if we can answer that. Cool. I don't think we have any other questions. I think I got them all. If I didn't, just post it again. But we can ask Rob. Is there anything else you want to show about these Copilot generated instructions?
Yeah, I think that's it for the instructions. Yeah, again, please try them out. Again, the release notes, it kind of describes how to set the setting and what you can do with them. And let us know how it goes.
Cool. And then, kind of on that note, what is the best way for people to provide feedback on these features, on Copilot in general?
Yeah, another thing that I'd really like to encourage y'all to do is that we have made a change to how this thumbs down button works, right? So we've had these buttons for a while. A lot of you are clicking these to give us feedback. It really helps us kind of improve the whole system when we have more feedback about whether the responses are good or bad. But now when you click the thumbs down button, it's actually going to pull up this menu where you can put in like just kind of a more detailed, more specific response and tell us exactly what was wrong with it, right? So if it didn't understand something about what you were asking, it wasn't able to pick up the right context, then you could click missing context, for example. And you can also click report an issue, which is actually going to pull up the issue reporter right here. Nice. Which is also kind of just an easy way to get to that. And if you think you found a bug or something like that, then you can fill out this form and give us as much detail as you can, and then it's going to create a GitHub issue for us.
Cool. So it's all kind of built into VS Code. You don't even have to leave your editor.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. I love that. Anything that makes it easier. Get rid of any extra steps. Work smarter, not harder, is always my philosophy.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, Rob, obviously these were great features, jam-packed demo. But I know people are always excited to hear about, what else y'all are working on in the Copilot space. So is there anything you talk about that's coming down the pipeline you can share with us?
Yeah, I think the things to watch out for, are definitely just more ways to get more context, from VS Code or from external sources, things like that. Just more, if we can give more information, more context to the LLM about kind of what you want and what's going on, you're always going to get better results. One thing that we're working on in that kind of domain is this other thing that has been mentioned in the release notes a few times, extension API called the Tools API. And this is something that's going to let extension authors contribute custom pieces of context, which can either be added explicitly by the user like this. So for example, when I click VS Code API, this is actually a tool which is being invoked by the LLM, or maybe they can even be included automatically by some chat participants. So that's definitely a big focus, and also just kind of more integrations into other VS Code features, showing up more places in the UI. For example, also mentioned in the release notes, if I want to figure out how to debug a new project and I'm not sure how to set up like a launch config to debug it, there's an experimental /start debugging command in chat, which is going to help me through that process. And so I think just more ways to kind of help you navigate and understand VS Code will always be a good thing to have.
Yeah, I think that's great. You mentioned kind of that generate debug configuration. One of the biggest questions we get, especially on our getting started with VS Code features or videos, is I don't understand the launch JSON. So we get that a lot. So I love that we're kind of bringing Copilot into as many places as possible that people might get tripped up on. It's all about that user experience and just making it as seamless as possible. So I love to hear that that's kind of always at the center of the team's focus.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, this was great, Rob. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off?
No, I think we've covered it.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Olivia.
Of course, as always, thank you so much for being here. And I know we will definitely see you in future release parties.
Sure. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, with that brings us to the end of our release party. I had so much fun hanging out with y'all. I know the engineers did as well. We always love seeing all of your comments and feedback because we really do listen to it all. So thank you so much for being here. Before you go, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. There you can make sure that you don't miss out on any fun live streams like this or the Python Pulse that will be happening in just a couple hours. You'll also see all of our different long form videos and shorts that we post. And then if you're on TikTok, you can also follow us there to see little tips and tricks that we post there throughout the week too. With that, thank you everyone so much for being here. It's always a great time. Like I mentioned, we're not going to be doing these monthly, but if you would rather see them monthly, please let us know and we can figure out how to make that work. But we will plan to have another one of these in early December, and we'll talk about everything that is happening in VS Code from now until then. With that, again, thank you for being here. I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you next time.